Introduce yourself. I find in my life as I walk with Jesus, or more specifically, He walks with me, I find that God is remarkably timely. That is, that what He brings to my life, what He speaks to my life as His child, is ever more timely. It's like He's looking in the window of my life and knows what's going on. Well, I guess He is. In your life too, as He brings us together as His people, as He brings His word to us and settles it for our hearts and minds, as He shares with us in a way that only God can share, not just for our heads, but for our hearts and souls, as this God speaks to us. He is remarkably timely. So when you were getting up this morning and getting dressed and thinking about, some of you it probably didn't even take a second thought, some of you it did. You're thinking about going to church today because that's what you always do on Sunday, or it's what you sometimes do on Sunday, or it's what you decided to do this Sunday. Whatever the case might be, I want you to hear this. God already knew, because He knows you. He knows the fabric and interior and exterior of your life. He knows what you're thinking and doing and where you're at and what's going on with you. So when you were getting up and getting dressed to come to church this morning, well, God had already purposed that. He decided to bring you here today. Listen, child, He decided to bring you here today because there is this timely word He wants to share with you and me. A word that speaks to us maybe in ways that we anticipate, most of the time in ways that we don't. It's always a powerful word. One that echoes inside of us and then outside of us in just really remarkable ways. Oh, you're going to see. Listen carefully. Jesus told stories. Most of us who are biblically literate in any way at least have this much understanding. If we read or listened to the Gospels, we know this to be true, that in the course of His earthly ministry, Jesus told stories. They're called parables. These little vignettes that describe out of life circumstance things that are divinely true. These stories that Jesus told were about showing them how things really work. He'd take things that were common to their lives or circumstances or events that were common to their understanding, and He'd lay out this story before them that would describe how things in the eternal sense work for every person, including them, only in language that they could hear and go, well, I get that. The one that we hear this morning, you and I, from the Gospel of Luke, is one of the most powerful and insightful stories He ever told. You see, this story that we hear this morning about the prodigal son, at least that's the way we know it, about the prodigal son, is really a story about all of us. We probably, as we initially hear it today, don't think in those terms, but come with me, loved ones, let's think in those terms. The story Jesus tells today is really about all of us. He is laying out this remarkable episode for us, not simply so that we can look at it from a distance and say, well, that's really a nice thing. Jesus is bringing it right to where you and I live because we're the sons. One or the other. In fact, in the course of your life and mine, probably to some degree, in some ways, we are both. We are or have been people who, in some circumstance, in some real and concrete way, are like the prodigal one. We wandered off. Maybe we did it on the outside for other people to see. Dime to a dollar, everybody here, and I know the preacher included, we've wandered on the inside. We've decided that we know best, and so we've taken our own course and chosen our own way and set our own path and steered our own ship. We've all been, maybe today we're the prodigal son. We have also, so you hear me carefully, we have also all been, and maybe today are, the older son. This one who stayed home and did everything he was supposed to do and saw himself as a really good person because he did everything he was supposed to do. All of us, listen, all of us at some point, we've been the older son too. I'll give you a phrase, listen to it carefully. In our sinfulness, we have acted in foolish and rebellious ways. We have. It is only the person among us, the people among us, who somehow can convince themselves, because God's not fooled, even the people around us aren't, that somehow this doesn't describe me. I want you to hear, over the course of our lives as Christians, we have all acted in foolish and rebellious ways. We have walked away because we thought we knew better. We have stayed because we thought we were better. We've somehow lived in this rarefied air of thinking that this story that Jesus tells has nothing to do with me. I want you to hear in spades this morning. It has to do with every one of us. And so here's the point, the first point that he makes, and it's such an important one. He was telling his disciples, and he's telling us on the basis of this story, we don't deserve to belong. We don't have this built-in, innate right to be part of God's family. We're not people who somehow, in some way, deserve to be children of, sons and daughters of this great and gracious King. We're not. As we listen to the story of the prodigal son, some of us will listen to his history and go, oh my Lord. Oh, obviously he shouldn't be part of the family. And we hear the arrogance of the older son, and we'll probably think to ourselves, well, he shouldn't belong. Jesus' point, hear me this morning, the point of the story, the first one is this: you and I, all of us, we don't deserve to belong. Jesus tells this story first because it's about all of us. More than that. He tells the story because the story is about our God, this Heavenly Father. It's a story about how remarkable He is with His patience. So you heard it unfold this morning. Listen to it unfold. This younger son comes to his father and demands this Jewish right. If I'm going to have half the property and all your stuff, I want it now. And this remarkable father says, okay. And he gives to him all the stuff that he's supposed to have. And the younger son does what, well, we do in our petulant youth. He wanders off. And he spends it on all the things that would give him joy and make him happy and light up his life. And one day he wakes up and there is nothing left. In fact, we hear from the older son, and isn't it apropos, he didn't just spend it. He spent it on prostitutes. Can we get any more sinful? And then it dawns on him that the guys who work for his father are doing better than he is. And so he thinks to himself, because he's going to figure this out, I'll go back and I'll be a servant. At least I'll have food in my belly. And then we get this picture of God's patience. Well, he's a long way off, a long way lost. The Father sees him in deep and abiding and wondrous love for this child that has wandered away. This patient Father runs to him and wraps his arms around him and welcomes him home. At no point do we hear this Father ever thinking or saying, I've had enough of him. I am done with his waywardness. I am sick of his rebellion. I am marking his name off of my will, my list, my things. Never. Instead, this son who had become so profoundly wayward is held in the arms of a father who has been deeply and passionately patient with him. And so the story doesn't end there. There's this older son, the son who thinks he's the good guy in all of this. And the father, listen, the father is just as patient with him. Well, he's complaining about how he's been so good and why is he so mistreated. This loving father continues to love him and abide with him and put up with him. The story, it's about how generous God is with his forgiveness. How much? How big? How many? Before he says no. I won't forgive you. Well, what we hear from this story through Jesus this morning is there is no place, no amount, no mountain too high for this father who loves his sons, his children, to say, I forgive you. The story is about how much he wants us to be his children. Every single one of us. In light of and in spite of who we are and how we live and how we act and what choices we make, this Father, because of his perfect Son, he wants us to be his children. So the story of the two sons, for you and me as people of the kingdom, as sons and daughters, it is filled with hope and assurance. It reminds us that it's never too late. If there are people in your life like there are in mine that have been part of the household, they were part of the family, and they wandered away, part of what Jesus is telling us in the story is listen until they draw their last breath. It's never too late. It's never too late for them to come home. It's never too late for them to be part of the family again. He's telling us we're never so bad. We're never so bad. We've done so many wrong, awful things, made so many sinful choices that we can't ever be a part of his family. If you're listening to me this morning and you're struggling with that, then listen closely. Jesus is telling us we're never so bad. I know what my life looks like. I don't know what yours looks like, but I know what mine looks like. And so I know I've been to the places where, man, I wonder if there's, and if I've reached it. He says to you and me, we're never so bad. And he's telling us we're never so good either. That we don't need every drop of his kindness and care and mercy. Some of us have lived so long in the church, we get to be the older son. We think we've done all the things we're supposed to do. We've been good, we've been righteous, we've been this, we've been that. And so we get it in our heads and our hearts that somehow we deserve to belong. Well, Jesus tells us we're never so good that we don't need every ounce of his kindness and care and mercy. For you and me, for all of us, that is such good news. Of all the stories he told, none is more powerful than this one. It gives us a picture of who we are. More than that, it shows us what a remarkable God we belong to. It is, my loved ones, it is a story of his love. This morning, this is the teaching of the Lord. If you would rise, please. And join with me now in confessing our